Carta Sierra, also known as the Idaho Lorax, has died.
Just a few weeks ago, America lost its most fascinating local politician. A man who was never afraid to stand up and challenge voices more powerful than his, and somebody who oftentimes was the only person speaking about issues that were so important to his community. That man was Idaho Lorax.
Part 1, Speaking for the Trees. Carter Reale, born in 1951 in Connecticut, was a self-described progressive, eclectic, green and free, independent, libertarian, democratic socialist, and futurist. A lot of ideologies, but he genuinely embodied all of them, somehow without much contradiction. He graduated from UC Berkeley in the early 1980s, moved to the greater Pocatello area, a metro area comprised of two main cities, that being Pocatello and Chubbuck, or as he calls them, the cities of Pokashima and Chub Noble. But it's kind of hard to figure out when he first came into the area, because when he got asked in an interview, he responded like this.
How long have you lived in the Pocatello area?
Too long exposed to radioactive materials.
This clip best showcases two aspects of Lorax and who he is as a person. One, his obsession with radiation, and two, his hatred with his own town. As you probably could have guessed, those two things are linked, as he believed that the town was infested with a massive supply of radioactive material that absolutely should not have been there. He believed that this came in the form of slag. Remember that name for later. No matter how many times he ran to lead them, he sure did not like that old place. I mean, just listen to what he said in the mayor debate.
I'm not proud of Pocatello. I got married in Fort Hall, not Pocatello.
Here's a question that I'm sure a lot of you are curious for the answer to. And it's who is interviewing this guy? How are there so many clips of Idaho Lorax just speaking to reporters and in debates and stuff? And yeah, it's because he was running for literally everything. This man ran for state assembly, state senate, House of Representatives, Senate, governor, but most of all, mayor.
In fact, he ran a lot. His most recent race was just last year.
There's actually more than you'd expect at this race. It's a pretty fascinating thing that was incredibly dramatic. The incumbent mayor placed third. And this is after, of course, the tragic killing of Victor Perez, a 17-year-old nonverbal autistic man, at the hands of the Pocatello Police Department. It inevitably led him to lose the election. Brian Bladd had a terrible night.
Brian Bladd is a pretty interesting figure. As you can probably guess, he's been in politics a long time. 16 years as mayor. Standing as a very popular figure before being outed in a very dramatic fashion. Do not look up recent press conferences with him, it's really depressing. But who is he? Elected in 2009, Brian Bladd has been a very economically focused mayor, prioritizing getting the city's finances straight and revitalizing downtown. He's also had many run-ins with our favorite local environmentalist.
I think it's abundantly clear to anyone who watches any media from either of them that Idaho Lorax and Brian Bladd hated each other. I mean, Lorax understandably viewed him as just totally ignorant to all the problems going on in the community, which is accurate because he kind of was. But yeah, Idaho Lorax believed that Bladd was just complicit in everything.
Bladd himself, at the surface, is just a fairly standard mayor for a rural purple college town, a kind of quirky centrist-y figure who's very easy to access and puts a lot of effort into PR. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and I'd say he's similar to Daniel Lurie, but nobody liked this guy. For a much bigger side tangent, this guy's other main focus was flag reform. This is the biggest upgrade of all time. We went from literally the lowest rated flag in the entire continent to like a genuinely good local symbol. Like, people like this. This is a well-known thing. Especially coming from this. Look, it's got the Chamber of Commerce logo on it. But back to the relationship between the two. Lorax and Bladd had a very difficult time with each other. They were constantly in conflict, and Lorax seemingly showed up to like every single city council meeting just to protest the guy. But there was one very fascinating interaction between the two, and it was this.
The time that Idaho got a hold of him for a full interview. With himself. It kind of seems like the two are just joking around at first, but it very quickly devolves into just a genuinely heated confrontation, as Lorax accuses the mayor of
Criminal abuse, criminal neglect, criminal endangerment, child endangerment.
by allowing children to attend irradiated schools. Somehow this isn't his craziest or even most high-profile interview that he's gotten. I mean, look at this. Yeah, Idaho Lorax got access to a United States senator for an interview. This is Mike Crapo, a 33-year incumbent politician. He's been in office for that long. It's just insane seeing Lorax's just sheer unkempt energy go up against this incredibly professionally groomed politician.
Some people just have to get by the name, Mr. Idaho Lorax. That's about the biggest problem we have.
I'm more than glad to take his side against the senator who made everyone's taxes worse. Alright, back to the big question. Who was interviewing this guy? How were there so many clips of him on talk shows and local radio shows and debates and news? How did this guy get so much press attention compared to his peers? Because there's more video of him than like any other candidate in like the past 20 years running for office. Probably more than the mayor himself in a lot of ways. I think a lot of this comes down to obviously just he was so entertaining. He was the funniest guy on every debate stage in every possible clip. But I think, let's be honest, as great of a guy as he was, as big of a fan as I am, he was making up a lot of stuff. Like, I'm sorry, this did not happen.
Now I hear that you claim that you could bring $10 billion into our community to clean up contamination.
On county record, when we were talking about $4 billion, and EPA has for any amount. They said it to me in a federal hearing, any amount. Of course, I was juggling a chunk of uranium at the time.
Like, I'm sorry, no matter how credible I do genuinely find him on a lot of things, I do not believe that you juggled a chunk of uranium in front of an EPA agent. I don't know, but I do know that he's probably making the story up. There's also several other incidents where I believe he just was blatantly using Smurf accounts under like news stories and comment sections on social media too. So how much support did he really have? This is actually a pretty interesting question because he did have a lot of very favorable interviews. He had a lot of people who were very clearly kind to him and cared about him a lot because he's a very likable guy. But I do think it's also pretty interesting to note that the support was not always there. And you want to know how I know this? Just look at his election results. This man was putting up double-digit numbers.
First, when looking at these election numbers, you need to draw a distinction between his federal, state, and local races. Obviously, as the pool of voters is just bigger, Lorax drew bigger numbers on his congressional runs. Now, it's very difficult to track down the margins on these incredibly minor local races, but from what I can tell, unfortunately, Lorax never really seemed to break 100 votes. Admittedly, it makes it so much more fascinating how much attention that he got from these runs. I mean, can you name a single other local politician who's putting up not even triple-digit vote tallies, who could be described as a
familiar face around Pocatello?
Look, even if the votes weren't always backing it up, there's a clear reason why this guy got so much attention. He is so unbelievably funny.
Wake up, Pocatello!
Whether it was him pulling up in the craziest fits known to man, or just speaking in a way that you've never seen a politician talk before. Like, look at this. Come on, the man admits it himself. He calls himself an entertainer. He knows how funny he is.
And I've come here to lend my expertise as a paralegal, as an educator, professional educator, as a scientist in many fields, and as an entertainer, delivering a little laughter and a little life to the seriousnesses of issues in this community.
It's undeniable that even if he didn't have the election results on his side, he was actually getting attention on these issues that nobody else was. And these were important issues. Come on, of course he got the attention. Can you name anyone else who would do this? It's hard to ignore a guy who tries to citizens arrest the mayor.
But I'm hereby putting you under arrest for the violations of Section 812.
Was he onto something? I have no idea. I'm not from Pocatello. I can't go and test these things, and these are clearly super local ordinance level issues, like placement of razor wire. But what I can tell is that he was certainly making a splash with this, and oh boy did he get in trouble, and he got one of the most fascinating headlines that I've ever seen from a state not named Florida.
Idaho Lorax removed from chambers after trying to arrest city council members.
And somehow the craziest headline to come out of all this was not the headline about the incident itself, it was about the aftermath.
Idaho Lorax banned from Pocatello city property, with a few exceptions.
The article itself is just as wild, referencing insane instances such as
Lorax's appearances at city council meeting have included his being dressed in a full hazmat suit and even taking his entire 3 minutes of public comment time saying absolutely nothing in a moment of silence against bullying.
I mean, come on, are these disruptive? Obviously. This is clearly getting in the way of the functioning of the town council. But let's be honest, these are likable pranks. These are really funny things that he's doing. You cannot walk away with a lower opinion of him after hearing that he did these things. And I know it's disruptive, but it cannot match the insane amount of hate that he was getting from these articles. Look at what people are writing in the comments.
I live next door to the Lorax. Are you kidding me? He has no power saw or water. He lives in 2 sheds and always has. He can't clean his yard. How would he plan to clean up Pocatello? This guy is insane. As a result of his trashy ways, I have had to buy the property all around the original property I purchased because he had homeless train jumpers living in tents next to my home. He is trying to name my land the Beaver Hamptons, making signs and hanging maps. All acts of an insane person. He bathes in the Portneuf River and dumps his sewage from his RV toilets into the river as well. He holds no shame, and how the city lets him live like this I don't know. But whatever, he has a paper-made llama fenced in his yard and rides roller skates around town with puppets he makes on his head. At one point I was cleaning up as we moved our home onto the property. He tried to stop me from digging up trees that were in my way on the home site, claiming he was the Idaho Tree Fairy, a registered city official.
These are insane allegations, but what's even more insane is that they are just obviously untrue. Like, he very clearly has functional utilities. Just watch his video from the Libertarian Party platform.
You're muted yourself. You gotta unmute yourself.
Okay, maybe functional is a bit of an exaggeration, but it is still odd that he's the only candidate on this entire list who does not have his address publicly listed. I think another really interesting thing with Lorax was just his sheer accessibility. This guy had so many public social media platforms. I mean, accounts on things you'd not even expect him to have. This man had like 2 or 3 LinkedIns, like 4 Facebooks. This man had everything. But I think part of why I find him so accessible and what was so fascinating was my own personal encounter that I had with him. I followed him on Instagram, and he repeatedly DM'd me and reached out several times. He was incredibly polite, very kind, and even if this was probably a bot responding, just sending this out to everyone with his own campaign messages. The way that he wrote shows me that he clearly did care and genuinely saw, even if I wasn't a constituent of his, he actually cared enough to reach out. And that's not something that I can say about a lot of politicians. And I really just commend how accessible that he was. Look at this. We've talked a lot about how he campaigned, but let's actually get into what he was campaigning on, what his ideas were.
Let's map this out. Lorax is someone who I would classify as a classic bottom left quadrant hippie type. On the political compass, this means someone who wants the government to take a stronger role in the economy, regulating more corporations, but also supports strong individual liberties and wants the state out of people's personal lives. This is evidenced by his support for things like LGBT rights, gun rights, and especially freedom of speech. He also wants the government to really take a big role in environmental protection and regulation, which I would be shocked if anyone had not put together by now. What is interesting is that his views are generally extremely reasonable for the most part. This is stuff that a ton of people heavily agree with. His presentation might be a little wild, but what he was saying was really not all that controversial of stuff.
But unfortunately, no matter how reasonable what he was saying was, a lot of people were still never able to see it because of his presentation. I mean, come on, people literally accuse this guy of being homeless with like next to no evidence. It's unfortunate. He's a very respectable guy. But come on, okay, I almost see a little bit of the craziest. Like, listen to him sing.
I love trash. Oh, little stuff and green stuff and pink stuff and whatever.
Look, I'm just gonna be honest. No matter how positively that I'm even covering him in this video, I'm sure that some people watching this are still gonna think he's crazy. Just some people are never able to get past the presentation, and that's okay. But you know what was the wild thing? I at one point thought that too. And it took me so much time, so much research to come to terms that I might have been wrong. Because you wanna know the crazy thing about all this? The part that I genuinely still struggle to wrap my mind around a little bit? He's right!
Part 2, the uranium curtain. There are a few companies with worse PR than Monsanto, often put on par with infamous corporations like BlackRock, Enron, and Halliburton. Monsanto is frankly synonymous with destruction to both human health and the environment. They're a big player in the agribusiness industry, or at least they were, because in 2018 they were acquired by a German competitor, Bayer, and it has gone down as one of the most dramatically failed business deals in history. Yet Bayer is now worth less today as the entire company, including all of the Monsanto assets, than just the pure dollar value that it cost Bayer to purchase the company in 2016. An insane fall off, but I cannot say I feel bad, because so much of this comes from the fact that Monsanto were genuinely evil and being sued by everyone. If they weren't villainous enough for the pesticide disasters, they were one of the key producers of Agent Orange, you know, the cancer sky powder from Vietnam. Now how does this all tie back to Pocatello? And Idaho Lorax. Let's get into it. In 1952, Monsanto purchased a large site in the town of Soda Springs, Idaho, about 45 miles or so southeast of Pocatello. Monsanto then used this land to develop a large industrial site where they siphoned pure phosphorus out of phosphate mined in the area. Here's where the problem starts. One of the byproducts of this is slag. Slag is a bit like lead or asbestos, as in it is a very cheap material that was used a lot in construction until everyone found out just how dangerous it can be. Slag is straight up radioactive. While not at a super dangerous level, the exposure to it can still cause health problems. Here's the thing, there is a lot of slag in Pocatello. Monsanto and FMC were still selling this for construction into the 90s. To this day, we are seeing the dramatic environmental impact of all of this. The EPA has poured a ton of money into cleanup in Soda Springs, the core of all the mining. Contaminants from mining leaked everywhere into groundwater, soil, creeks, and even the sky. This area was a literal Superfund site. You know, an urgent priority to clean up. I mean, it's been 30 years and they're still not done cleaning it yet. And before you say, great, that's Soda Springs. I mean, 40 miles is a pretty big radius. I'm sure nothing has happened over in Pocatello. No. Bandit County was fully affected too. The Bannock Shoshone tribes sued over these exact complaints, stating that Monsanto and FMC were dumping hazardous materials all over their lands. And they won the case. FMC did dump millions of tons of hazardous waste onto the Fort Hall Reservation, which, I don't know, is right next to Pocatello. The EPA said that there was imminent and substantial endangerment to the health of the people in the region, as well as obviously the local environment. These cases went far, and all of them sided with the tribes and the EPA. Monsanto and FMC did insane amounts of environmental damage to this region. In 2021, YouTuber Radioactive Drew, a fascinating channel you should definitely check out after this, huge shout out to him, posted a video discussing the radiation in the Pocatello region. What he found out is just insane. The parking lots in the city were literally showing similar readings to that of the Trinity site. You know, where a nuclear bomb was tested 80 years ago. He also mentions a fascinating EPA survey from the 1980s, where they concluded that yes, there actually is a problem with a low level of radiation, while certain places, notably the houses and roads, paved and built with slag, were far worse. The town as a whole still had an issue with consistent low level of radiation. But it gets worse, the water contamination. Yeah, it was really bad, like killed animals level contaminated. Now look, uranium, or really radiation in general, isn't the core issue here. These are not lethal levels of exposure. Hell, for 99% of people in the area, there's minimal risk of any health issues. However, being this exposed to radioactive materials in your home, like a decent amount of people there are, is obviously bad for you, even if it doesn't affect literally everyone in the community.
Idaho Lorax was right. There is a serious environmental crisis in southeast Idaho, and it's something that we need to come to terms with, in a way that the town council and mayor have just avoided for so long. I think that no matter how out there his presentation is, and how wacky he might have seemed, you gotta take into account that this man had legitimate evidence and was bringing up a real problem that people in that area for far too long have ignored. It is insane to me that people pretend that this was just never a thing, and that he's just this crazy guy when it's this easy to find this evidence out. Learning about the Lorax and everything about him and all of his story has been such a fascinating experience. I think that it's really shown me just how interesting the local politics really can be. We underrate it so much, if that's if we focus on it at all. I think that outside of the major cities, most people have no idea who any mayor is. Hell, most people probably have heard of Mamdani before their own actual mayor. This entire saga has really inspired me to actually start participating in local politics, and I really thank it for that, because I think it's been such a fascinating experience. I mean, hell, even in the town that I live in, which is a pretty boring place, there's been fascinating things. A guy joined onto a town hall meeting to rant about the bouncy house mafia. I mean, people are just making stuff up, and there's crazy and fascinating people everywhere. And it's so funny to me that Lorax actually was onto something. I really think that there is a lot to this story, and I think the message that we should all take away from it is talking about how presentation impacts credibility, and how people often tend to just blindly dismiss something coming from somebody who they don't see as a conventional method of disposing of that information. Lorax was talking about real, serious environmental issues in this region that actually do matter and do exist, but they were just all ignored because of the way that he looked and spoke. And I think that's an absolute tragedy. Idaho Lorax deserved credibility, because the issues that he was talking about were real, serious, and actually impacted the daily lives of the people more than honestly anything the actual city government was covering. This community lost a hero, a genuinely brilliant scientist, and a all-around great guy who I have so much respect for. I cannot and will not be convinced that this guy was just some crazy hippie. That's not going to happen for me. I can clearly tell that he had a lot of impact and value within this community of Pocatello. And sure, I'll probably never get to see you there. I mean, it's far away from anything I've got business in. But I'm gonna be honest, I can tell that this town has an Idaho Lorax shaped hole in its heart.